Welcome back. So what are the alternative routes for supplying US troops? Well, at the moment, one is through Kyrgyzstan. But under Moscow's influence, it has recently announced that it will close an important airbase in the country. Nazanin Moshiri explains the repercussions.
A US military plane lands at the Manas base. This vital supply route for the Americans' war in Afghanistan is now at risk. After 7 years of tolerating the presence of Western troops, Kyrgyzstan wants them to leave.
The problems that have amassed stir up a negative response in our society, and people justly raise the question, and have been doing so for quite a while, about the reasons to have the base on the territory of Kyrgyzstan. Just the other day, the government of Kyrgyzstan made a decision on ending the term for the American military base on our territory.
Significantly, the Kyrgyz president made the statement in Moscow minutes after Russia promised billions of dollars in aid. Russia clearly doesn't want the US on what it views as its strategic backyard. This news couldn't have come at a worse time for the Americans. The Manas airbase, which is 35 kilometers from the Kyrgyzstan capital Bishkek, is the US's only military outpost in Central Asia. It's home to around 1,000 military personnel, contractors and various coalition aircraft. Since 2001, it's been used by the US to support its operations in nearby landlocked Afghanistan. It's highly important to US forces' plans to double its troop presence in Afghanistan and key to seeking alternative supply routes that bypass Pakistan, where there's a significant security risk. That risk all too evident with this attack in northwest Pakistan on Tuesday. Fighters blew up a key supply bridge. Lorries carrying NATO and US provisions now unable to cross. There may yet be some hope for the Americans. US officials say talks are ongoing and the Kyrgyzstan parliament still has to discuss the issue. Not all MPs agree with the government's plans.
I think this decision is not wise and not well thought through. Why? First of all, I was surprised with the fact that on February the 3rd, here in the Parliament, cabinet members and heads of presidential administration reassured us that the issue of the airbase is not on the agenda.
If the go-ahead is given, the US will have 180 days to leave. The runway that was built for Soviet bombers could soon be back in the hands of its original owners. Nazanin Moshiri, Al Jazeera.
While NATO countries are scrambling for alternative routes, the Russian President Dmitry Medvedev says that Russia and its ex-Soviet allies are ready to cooperate with the US in stabilising Afghanistan. This follows an agreement with Moscow last year, allowing NATO supplies to be transported by rail through Russia. While Kyrgyzstan, we were just talking about, is one of the former Soviet republics neighbouring Afghanistan, others include Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. They all have borders with Afghanistan, but any presence of US troops on the land would require Moscow's blessing. And this is highly unlikely under the current situation, as Russia is trying to regain control over its backyard. And no one, especially in Europe, is expected to apply pressure on Russia because of their need for its gas exports. This leaves Iran as one other option available. But what price would the US have to pay to get Iran to allow the passage of US supplies to Afghanistan through its territory? Well, for more discussion, we're still joined by our guests in Washington, D.C., Marvin Weinbaum, in Kabul, Mullah Abdul Salam Saif, and in Islamabad, retired General Mohammad Assad Durrani. Mr. Weinbaum, if I could come back to you first of all, it seems as though Russia is saying it wants to cooperate, but it doesn't really want to. It wants to close off the former Soviet states route, so it wants control over any help that's given. What do you make of that?
Well, Russia does want to cooperate, particularly because the Russians are no more anxious to have a radical or extremist militant group come to power again in Kabul. And they want to see the United States there. They don't want the United States to go in. I don't think Iran does either, or certainly Tajikistan or Uzbekistan. They were very fearful of the Taliban when they were in control up until 2001. So, but what Russia is doing is playing a strategic game here. It is pressuring because it wants concessions from the United States on missile placement in Eastern Europe. And this is some way in which Russia can say, and it is cooperating at this point, aside from the Kyrgyzstan, it's saying if you want this cooperation to continue, you're going to have to change your policies, the new administration, about Czechoslovakia, about Poland. So this is part of a larger strategic game that's going on. I might mention one thing, that Kyrgyzstan was very anxious to have the United States there until it was simply outbid by the Russians.
So is this all about money, Mr. Durrani? What do you make of this? Effectively, can routes in be bought?
I'm sure, as far as the money part is concerned, that the United States and its present state of economy should take care of. And if it works out with either Russia or Iran, although both of them will probably negotiate much harder than Pakistan has ever had. So if it worked out, and if they did manage to, divert their routes and started supporting their trips, I'll say good luck to them. I'm not suggesting that because of that, they will have that success that they are aiming to have, because those are other dynamics.
But do you think, can Pakistan afford to lose the influence of having the main supply route?
Yeah, that's, I think, a very good question, because more than having, or keeping the influence on the supply routes and thereby being, of some value to the allies, I think there is another factor. Once this card is taken away from Pakistani hand, then I suppose what might happen is that with increased troops now coming into Afghanistan, and most of them are obviously going to be deployed close to our borders, we'll have much more violence on Afghanistan side, and as resultantly, the fallout on our side of the borders would increase, and that means that I think we will see not only air incursions but also violation of our borders by the American ground troops. So that is going to create a problem, a certain problem, which one is quite seriously thinking about. Yes.
Mullah Abdul Salam Zaif, do you think that having this, that the Taliban will actually try to use the attacks on the convoy routes as a bargaining chip? I mean, there's been talk of negotiations with the Taliban to try to resolve problems in Afghanistan. Is this part of their tactic to have something that they can say, well, look, we will stop doing this if you do that? Is that part of it?
It's not possible, I think, to negotiate about this kind of thing with the Taliban. And if the Taliban, they are negotiating with them, it will be about the ending of the American in Afghanistan, and the timetable of American in Afghanistan, and what time they should live in Afghanistan. They should not talk about their security, because they are enemy of American, and they want to kill them, and they want to defeat them. I think this kind of thing is not possible.
Okay, Marvin Weinbaum, just to come back to the issue of the Pakistan influence there. I mean, is there a case for American troops actually going in on the ground? Obama has seemed to suggest that if the Pakistan administration didn't deal with problems as he saw it in Pakistan, then the Americans would be happy to do so. Do you think there comes a point where they will need to say, right, well, you're obviously not doing a good job militarily, we need to send people in, or do you think that's been ruled out?
Well, I think Obama's made himself clear during the campaign that when he suggested that the United States would act unilaterally, according to his way of seeing things, it would be where there were high-profile al-Qaeda figures that the United States, for some reason, Pakistan was not cooperating, and the United States would thereby act alone. No, I don't believe anyone is contemplating any kind of incursion of a major kind. Ambassador Durrani, I think, is right in saying that the pressure may build. Surely it's already building. And so it's going to be difficult. And Pakistan, I don't think, is going to lose its leverage completely, because the United States has much greater, wider scope of interests in Pakistan. Pakistan is a nuclear state. Pakistan borders India, and the dangers of armed conflict there exist. So American stakes in the region, as important as the supply line is, go well beyond just simply what's needed in Afghanistan.
Okay, Mr. Durrani, just back to you. We're expecting the new US envoy, Richard Holbrooke, in the area maybe next week. Do you think that he will have a different take on things that will actually make a difference to the way the situation is being handled in Pakistan?
Well, once he's here and he goes around and, you know, takes a fresh look and talks to so many people, maybe he will change his mind. But up to now, whatever one has heard about the brief given to him by the State Department, his own findings that I believe got published, that going by that account, I do not think that he has any, or he's had any other ideas. But it is quite possible under these circumstances, looking at the difficulties, not only the supply lines and the additional money, but the last couple of months or couple of years one has seen, so many people are suggesting, their own generals, British generals, that the war was not winnable in this particular manner, and some change around was necessary. So the advantage that now the new administration has is that that change that in any case was necessary, it becomes easier for the new team to implement. So after he goes around, maybe he will come to certain sensible conclusions. But if he didn't, then I think we'll see more of the same for quite some time.
OK, on that note, we must leave it there. We've run out of time. But thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us on this discussion. Marvin Weinbaum, Mullah Abdul Salam Zaif and retired General Mohammed Asad Durrani. Thank you for your time. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. We always welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email them to us. InsideStory@aljazeera.net is the address. Bye for now.